Hello, I'm Super Orange Cat here. I'm today covering Toonami's ratings from this past Saturday, February 10th, 2024. Now let's start at the top of the block. At the top of the block, we have the debut of Ninja Kamui, the English dub, at a 0.10, Demon Slayer at a 0.09, Lycoris Recoil at a 0.09, One Piece at a 0.07, Naruto Shippuden at a 0.06, and IGPX and the sub of Ninja Kamui's numbers are not in. Ultimately, this is a pretty interesting week to unpack because a lot of people had some very quick reactions of like, "Oh, look how good Ninja Kamui did. It got a point 1. We never get a point 1." Well, if you ignore the last 2 weeks where the show that's now after it, Demon Slayer did get a point 1, I guess you can say that. And also, if you actually look how they rank down in order, all the .10s, it actually was the very lowest one. So that means it was the show that was the closest to getting down to a .09. So rounded, it went up to a .10, but if you do unrounded, it was probably more like a .096 or .97, which means really it probably didn't even ever get to a .1. And then after that, you have what appears to be like, a very solid consolidation afterwards with Demon Slayer and Lycoris Recoil, both right next to each other for the second straight week. Lycoris Recoil was just behind Demon Slayer by one ranking spot at .09. That's about what they did last week, if I recall correctly. So not much of a change there. It's interesting to see because this was probably the Lycoris Recoil episode I think most embodied what Lycoris Recoil really is about, and it's nice to see that at least held the numbers they had last week, with that episode, because it's actually a bit of a divisive episode. I've seen some people say they really didn't like it because it's not really action-packed or anything. I love it. But I'm someone who personally really does like slice of life anime, so it was something I was really receptive to. And then after that, again, it's interesting because One Piece and Naruto actually dropped off quite a bit to .07 and .06 respectively, with Shippuden actually falling out of the top 50 for premieres on Saturday night, which is something Toonami shows the last few months really haven't done much. And I don't know why. It's might be just a 1 week wonder thing, you know? And also those shows, and actually the other two shows too, Lycris Recoil, Demon Slayer, Naruto Shippuden, and One Piece all were the lowest rated shows when rounded to the nearest 100th, which means that they probably rated a little lower than the rounded number indicates. So really, you can really say that the ratings aren't as good as they seem when you round it. Like Lycris Recoil probably was closer to like a .086 and a .09, which is pretty interesting to see. And another thing that's interesting to see is where do we go from here, especially when it comes to Ninja Kamui. It's clear from this first week that Demon Slayer and Lycris Recoil were held up by the Halo effect and not necessarily by having their own separate audiences. And that's something to see. Because again, 2 weeks ago, previous week, Lycris Recoil built on, I believe, Dr. Stone in front of it, which made it look like, oh, it might have had its own audience, but this week it's not doing that anymore. And it's going to be really interesting to see where that goes here on out. Because I had really high expectations of Lycris Recoil, and although you can definitely argue it's done well in the ratings, I personally thought it would do even better than this, to be honest. And Ninja Kamui, and a lot of people are already doing their victory laps on .10, let me tell you. With only one exception, I had to go back and look at this up. With exactly one exception, every Toonami Originals highest rated episode was the first episode. It did not bring in extra viewers as time went on. And the only exception was Fully Coolly Progressive. And that wasn't even the second episode, it was the third episode. And I've mentioned this just before, but my personal theory about why that episode did so well was the fact that in every promo, you had Haruko in a bikini doing wacky stuff. And let me tell you, Haruko is waifu fuel for a lot of people who grew up with Adult Swim action. So a lot of people were going to show up because of that. Sex sells. And ultimately, it'd be interesting to see where Ninja Kamui goes from here. I think not only will it probably go down, I think it'll start sinking like a stone because it's interesting. The people who are more like the Toonami regulars seem to really like Ninja Kamui. From what little I've seen from people who aren't necessarily Toonami regulars but gave the show a shot, they didn't like it that much. And it'll be interesting to see. I think a lot of the people who are more like, oh, just popping in, interested to see what the show is, they're probably dropping out. And the Toonami regulars will stay around, but I expect Ninja Kamui to drop quite a bit week to week. Probably to like a point oh 0.08. And the reason why I talk about the Halo effect is it'll be interesting to see, does Demon Slayer or Lycoris Recoil fall along with Ninja Kamui? Or do they find a way to go above a Ninja Kamui? It'll be interesting, and it would be actually pretty damn hysterical if both Demon Slayer and Lycoris Recoil do better than Ninja Kamui next week, which is something I think is a very distinct possibility. Because again, Ninja Kamui, when unrounded, didn't even get to a point 1, which makes it maybe the lowest rated original premiere in Toonami history. Again, with the whole, oh, everyone's cutting cable, that's kind of to be expected. But again, it made no records. It really didn't make much of a splash outside of the people who are already going to probably watch every episode of it. And, I'm kind of pessimistic about the long term future of the show in terms of its popularity. I already said when I did my original review, I didn't like it. It felt like I've seen 30 different anime, TV shows, and movies that had a very similar plot, and there was nothing distinctive about Ninja Kamui, you know? It's not even the most distinctive Tsunami original about ninjas, because at least Fena Pirate Princess looked like it was trying to do something. I actually really loved the ending of Fena Pirate Princess, and I'm kind of surprised most people didn't. I guess because they, like, didn't understand the whole allegory to Noah's Ark and stuff. It's one of those, if you understood the allegory, it's actually pretty beautiful. I really did like the end of it, and I thought it ended on the right note. I was kind of surprised when I heard they're thinking about a season 2 of Fena Pirate Princess because there was nowhere to go from there. You know what? I'm getting off topic. I've already talked a lot about these week's ratings. Ultimately, it was an interesting week. On the surface, seems to be a decent week, but I wouldn't be surprised if next week takes a downward turn, and I'm expecting that with Ninja Kamui at the front of the block. And I believe I heard somewhere that either next week or the week after, the 2:30 slot that's currently held by ITPX is going to be replaced by rerunning Dragon Ball Z Kai, which is going to be pretty interesting. If you know the history of Dragon Ball on the block, I would call it the absolute superstar show that Toonami's had in the Adult Swim era. I'll say without a doubt, if you told me, hey, Super Orange Cat, of the 12 years that Toonami's been back on Adult Swim, what's the one takeaway you got? And my one takeaway would be like, Goku still got it. Dragon Ball still got it. People will show up to watch Dragon Ball. Because we remember those days where like everything would get like a 0.15, 0.16, and then Dragon Ball Super would come in with like a point 0.4 out of nowhere. And it was regular. It was breeding college football games. It was beating college basketball games on cable, you know. People showed up for it. And if I knew that, oh, Dragon Ball Z Kai is coming back. We've got the rights to air them. I'm thinking, eat off with them. People will show up to watch at midnight for Dragon Ball Z Kai, even if they're old reruns. More people will watch that than Ninja Kamui. But what do you guys think? I know a lot of people like it, and more power to you if you like Ninja Kamui. I just personally don't. So what do you guys think? Leave your comments, leave the pins down below. I am the Super Orange Cat, and that is all.